The cameras weren't rolling when the truth finally started bubbling to the surface. No reunion stage, no confessional chair, no glossy OWN lighting softening the edges. Just raw tension hanging in the air like thick smoke waiting to choke anyone who dared breathe too deeply. For weeks, fans had been dissecting every leaked clip, every whispered rumor, every shaky video that made its way from backstage to the digital streets. But the one voice that stayed quiet, silent like a man walking through a minefield, was Martell Holt. And if you know Martell, then you know silence is not his language. Martell speaks through shade, posture, charm, and chaos. But this time, he said nothing. Not when Stormy went live with that infamous "I said what I said." Not when Latisha dropped her cryptic scripture post. Not even when OWN suspended both women and froze filming. People kept waiting. Comment sections turned into battlegrounds. YouTubers refreshed feeds like it was breaking news coverage. Everyone wanted to know one thing: why was Martell so quiet? But here's the twist. His silence wasn't peace. It wasn't maturity. It wasn't him trying to stay above the drama. It was him sitting on something heavy, something he didn't want to expose until he absolutely had to. And today, that dam finally breaks. Because Martell Holt has now spoken, and the truth he dropped may be the one thing that changes this entire Latisha versus Stormy war forever. Before we get to his words, before we break down the moment he finally opened his mouth, you need to understand something much deeper, something that goes way back, long before this fight, long before the recording, long before the Women in Business event turned into a battlefield. Martell Holt, for better or worse, has been at the center of every major storm in Huntsville. You can say his name and the energy in the room shifts. People look over their shoulder, cameras perk up, producers lean forward. Because Martell doesn't just walk into drama, he drags it in behind him like a shadow he can't escape. Remember, this man built an empire with Melody, watched it crack in real time, and then watched the world judge every piece that fell. When the marriage collapsed, Martell became the villain by default. When the accusations surfaced, he became the face of betrayal. And when the show needed ratings, he became the spark producers knew they could rely on. But what nobody expected was how deeply connected he was to the tension between Latisha and Stormy long before fists were flying. See, the public thinks the women started this war themselves. Two powerhouses, two brands, two energies colliding. But backstage, Martell's name was floating around like an uninvited guest no one knew how to remove. Because there's history here. History most fans don't know. And it starts with a relationship that's always been more complicated than the cameras ever let on. Latisha and Martell have had years of back and forth, trust, distrust, strategic alliances, and silent tension. One moment, they're smiling in group scenes. The next, they're on opposite sides of a reunion stage without even looking at each other. There's respect, sure, but there's also fear. Because both know each other's tea a little too well. Stormy, on the other hand, walked in fresh. New energy, new fire, no fear of Martell, no hesitation calling out what she felt was fake, forced, or hypocritical. And that rubbed Martell the wrong way in ways he never publicly admitted. So when whispers started spreading that Stormy had received a recording involving Latisha's husband, yes, but allegedly also involving information connected to Martell, that's when things went from petty tension to potential explosion. Because if there's one thing Martell cannot stand, it's being caught in the middle of a secret he didn't approve or control. And that, according to sources close to production, is exactly what happened. But here's the part nobody saw coming. Martell didn't know where the recording came from. He didn't know who leaked it. And he didn't know how much of it was true or edited. He was, for once, as blindsided as everyone else. Now let's talk about the fight itself, the one OWN is scrambling to contain. Fans think they know the story from that grainy leaked clip, but that 14-second video was just the surface of a much deeper mess. When Latisha and Stormy confronted each other backstage, Martell wasn't even in the room at first. He wasn't supposed to be involved. He wasn't even scheduled to film that day. But the moment security stepped in, the moment phones came out, the moment producers realized they were losing control, somebody made a call. And yes, that call was to Martell. Why him? Because for all his faults, Martell is a gravitational force. When he shows up, people stop. People pay attention. People listen, even if they don't like him. Producers thought bringing him in might calm Stormy and Latisha down, or at least separate their energy long enough to reset the room. But when Martell walked in and heard what the argument was really about, when he heard Stormy say she had audio, when he heard Latisha accuse someone of trying to sabotage her family, when he heard that his name was floating around in the middle of it, that's when his face changed. Not angry, not shocked, not confused. Just locked in. Because the one thing Martell hates more than anything is feeling played. And in that moment, he felt played by everyone. Stormy, Latisha, producers, even the cast member who allegedly recorded the call. He didn't know who to trust, what was real, or how deep this went. And yet, he still didn't say a word publicly. Not when fans begged him to speak. Not when bloggers dragged him into theories. Not when clips started circulating with his name trending on Twitter. He stayed quiet. Until now. So what did Martell finally say? What did he admit? What truth did he drop that OWN did not want out? Well, his statement wasn't long, it wasn't dramatic, it wasn't even loud. In fact, it was the calmness that made it so unsettling. Martell finally broke his silence during a private recording for a scene OWN hoped would help control the damage. It wasn't meant to leak, it wasn't meant to go viral, but someone in the room whispered it to a blogger, who whispered it to someone else until it eventually reached the streets. When the cameras asked Martell what he thought about the fight between Latisha and Stormy, he leaned forward, took a breath, and said, "Y'all think this was about them, but it wasn't. This started way before Stormy and Latisha threw hands. This been building. People been lying, people been manipulating. And the truth is, somebody on this cast is playing all sides. They're feeding drama to stay relevant. And if I expose what I know, OWN won't have a show left to film." That was it. One paragraph. No names. No details. But enough weight to shake the entire foundation of Huntsville. Because Martell didn't deny the recording. He didn't defend Latisha. He didn't attack Stormy. He didn't even clear his own name. Instead, he pointed to a third person, a puppet master, someone in the shadows controlling the chaos. And the fandom went wild. Within hours, theories exploded. People rewatched old episodes. Twitter threads turned into research projects. YouTubers started connecting dots. Because if Martell, the king of mess himself, says someone else is stirring the pot, then it must be serious. And here's where things get even messier. According to insiders, Martell wasn't lying. There is a cast member who allegedly passed information to Stormy. The same cast member who told Latisha a different version. The same person who floated around backstage acting innocent while the rest of the cast was turning on each other. OWN knows who it is. Carlos King knows who it is. And now, Martell has confirmed it without confirming it. That's why the network is scared. Because if Martell decides to name names, two things happen instantly. 1, the fandom explodes. 2, the show loses its safety net. Because exposing the real puppet master means exposing production manipulation, broken NDAs, off-camera alliances, and secrets the show has been sitting on for years. OWN isn't dealing with just a fight anymore. They're dealing with a time bomb. But let's talk about the emotional cost, the part fans don't see. The fight didn't just shake Latisha and Stormy. It hit families, it hit marriages, it hit brands, It hit friendships that were already hanging by a thread. Latisha has been trying to hold her family together ever since the Whisper campaign about that recording started. She's been praying, posting scriptures, and pretending she's okay, but anyone with eyes can see the cracks. Her composure has tightened, her smile has gotten thinner, her voice has gotten quieter. That woman is fighting battles in private while the world dissects her life like it's entertainment. Stormy? She's built her entire brand on strength, on speaking her truth, on not being scared of anyone's energy. But this fight didn't give her power. It drained her. People saw a 14-second leak, but they didn't see her crying backstage when producers pulled her aside. They didn't see her worry about her businesses being dragged into mess. They didn't see her stress over whether she crossed a line that could cost her everything she worked for. And Martell? People love to label him the villain. But even villains get tired. Even villains break down. He's been dragged through the mud so long that he walks like he expects another hit at any moment. And this situation put him right back in the crosshairs of a drama he didn't start, at least not directly. All three of them are hurting. All three feel betrayed. All three feel watched, judged, poked at, and misunderstood. And that's the emotional core OWN failed to control. Because this isn't just a TV fight anymore. It's a breaking point. So where does this end? What happens now that Martell has spoken? What happens now that fans know there's a third person pulling strings behind the scenes? OWN has 3 choices, and none of them are pretty. 1. Force the cast into a sit-down with a neutral moderator, hoping the truth spills out in a controlled environment. 2. Suspend or fire the cast member responsible for the recording leak, even if that means rewriting entire storylines. 3. Do damage control by trying to silence Martell's statement and pretending nothing happened. But here's the truth. You can't unring a bell. And Martell Holt just rang the loudest one Huntsville has heard in years. Because if he decides to name names, if he decides to expose the puppet master, then the entire franchise shifts. Alliances shatter, reputations crumble, producers scramble, and fans get a kind of honesty reality TV rarely delivers. The storm between Latisha and Stormy was violent. But the storm coming next, the one Martell just hinted at, that one might change the entire show forever. And now everyone is waiting. Waiting to see if Martell speaks again. Waiting to see if the truth comes out. Waiting to see who cracks first. Because in Huntsville, secrets don't stay buried. They rise. They leak. They explode. And the person holding the next match might be Martell Holt himself. So stay ready, because this story is far from over. And the next chapter? It's going to be even messier than the last.